This is our second and last example in section 1.6, day 2. We just talked about the sequence of transformations, the correct order in which to transform graphs using their equations or their function form that you might see. Here's an example of something that we're going to do related to a visual representation of a graph. So you'll notice here that we've got a graph that's called f of x. There's not really an equation for that. It's kind of a pieced together function. So we're just going to take it as it is, call this f of x, whatever it happens to be, but then we're going to transform it based on the function notation that you see up here. So instead of having an actual equation, we're going to call it just f. Now the order in which we do transformations, as I mentioned in the last example, is going to be this. So we're going to start with horizontal, go to vertical second. So in this case, we have horizontal as all the stuff on the inside of the parentheses. Notice that we just have x minus 1. That's going to tell us that we're going to go to the right by 1. So if we use this to start, I'm just going to place some dots on my endpoints and use that as kind of an anchor as far as where to change this. So if I'm going to go to the right by 1, I'm just going to move each one of these dots over to the right by 1. And then I'm going to connect the dots for my new picture. Not perfect, but I think it does the job. So that will take care of everything on the inside for transformations. Now we work towards the outside. So for the vertical part, remember that we are going to do reflections and stretch shrink first, then the very last thing is going to be up or down. So looking at this one right here, it does appear that we have down 2 at the end of this problem. We're going to wait on that. We're going to deal with this stuff out in front first because that will have something to do with the stretch shrink or the reflections. We can actually do both at the same time here. It's the -2, and so we can take the y values on these and just multiply them by -2. Now the nice thing is that if you have zeros, multiply those by -2, that's still just 0. Up here we have +2. If we multiply that by -2, that's going to swing down here to make a new point, and then we're just going to connect the dots after that, trying to make the shape somewhat representative. Okay, so there's my new piece for coming from this -2. So that was, just to recap, was a reflection over the x-axis, and it was also a vertical stretch by a factor of 2. So the reflection was the negative, the 2 was the stretch. Now we're on to the very last step, and that is to move this down 2. This -2 is going to mean that it goes down 2. So down 2, from what we have right here, I just made another graph to have a little extra workspace, but my point started there, so I'm going to move it down 2. Here's one of my new points. I was over here at 5, so I'm going to 5, 0. I'm going to move that down 2. Ends up right here. Looks like I got to go down a little farther on this axis. Got to go down to -6 over here, and so then this will be my new shape to this graph. These ones, it is really important to go in the order that I was talking about with the sequences of transformations. If you don't, you'll get a completely different graph. So make sure that you follow the order of operations, and that way, you know, some graphs need it, some graphs don't, but if you do it in this order, like I mentioned here, then you're going to be safe for every example that you're looking at.